Saturday, October 5th. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's headlines. 18 survivors of the Indonesian boat accident are expected to return to Beirut on Sunday, with the exact number of Lebanese nationals missing still unknown. Al-Qaeda in Syria is fighting to drive rivals out of areas bordering Turkey and Iraq in a bid to control territory stretching from Iraq into northern Syria. And Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei criticizes some aspects of President Hassan Rouhani's landmark UN visit. 18 survivors of the Indonesian boat accident are expected to return to Beirut on Sunday, with the exact number of Lebanese nationals who went missing during the incident still unknown. Following talks with Indonesian Defense Minister Purnomo Yusintoro in Jakarta, caretaker Minister of State Ahmad Karami, who is heading a Lebanese official delegation to Indonesia, said there was a discrepancy in the number of missing. Concerning the repatriation of the bodies of the Lebanese victims, Karami said DNA tests would take time, as samples taken from relatives in Lebanon need to be matched with the corpses. Karami also noted that a further 6 Lebanese were held for overstaying visas in Indonesia, and now they have been released from jail and would return to Lebanon following Tuesday. The 6 were identified as Ali Hassan, Faraj Mhish, Nasruddin Hassan, Muhammad Abdel Latif, Abdel Rahman Isa, and Khudr Darwish. A passerby was wounded when a bomb exploded on Friday at a garbage dump in the Ain al-Hilwe Palestinian refugee camp near Saida. The Ain al-Hilwe blast resulted from an explosive device that destroyed part of a wall on the side of a road, but no casualties have been reported. The blast went off in the Al-Zif area and the camp near the vegetable market's entrance, leaving a man identified as Muhammad Adouhi just lightly injured. Caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati says Lebanon is ready to facilitate the transfer of humanitarian aid to Syria, days after the UN Security Council urged Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's government to allow cross-border deliveries. Mikati expressed Lebanon's readiness to facilitate the passage of humanitarian aid to Syria from its soil, according to the national news agency, which quoted the caretaker premier as saying during a meeting with UN Chief Ban Ki-moon. UN Aid Chief Valerie Amos said that if requests were fully implemented, then humanitarian groups could help about 2 million people in Syria who have been unreachable for many months. Lebanon's ambassador to the UN, Nawaf Salam, said on Friday that delivering aid to Syria would limit the refugee influx into Lebanon. During his meeting with Ban, Mikati also thanked the UN for its efforts in helping Lebanon cope with the crisis in Syria through the International Support Group for Lebanon. Inger Anderson, the World Bank Vice President for the MENA region, renewed the international commitment to support Lebanon to cope with the influx of Syrian refugees and the need to translate aid to practical steps, assuring that political stability would encourage committing funds. In an interview to the An-Nahar Daily, Anderson stressed the necessity to be aware of the risks of spiking number of refugees on the economic and financial sectors, as well as Lebanon's society. International meeting in New York recently announced $339 million in additional humanitarian aid in response to the Syrian crisis, including $74 million for Lebanon to support Syrian refugees. Anderson said the World Bank was working simultaneously on 4 tracks to secure and channel the resources to contain the emerging crisis. The first track entails the necessity to benefit from aid previously offered by donor countries and organizations, while the second step is to create a trust fund to raise money. The March 14 Alliance is mulling a new plan to push forward the formation of the new cabinet that would be based on the Babda Declaration. The coalition will form a political media pressure bloc to form a neutral cabinet, according to March 14 Forces General Secretariat Coordinator Faris Souaid. He noted that those who reject to include the Babda Declaration in any ministerial statement should form another cabinet according to their own perceptions. The Babda Declaration was approved unanimously during a national dialogue session back in June of 2012, and it calls for Lebanon to adopt a policy of dissociation from regional developments. A source close to the March 14 camp reiterated to An-Nahar that the alliance insists on the formation of a cabinet that excludes Hezbollah. Nina Khatib, who will be arriving in Beirut next week to start her new post as the Carnegie Middle East Center's new director, replacing Paul Salem, says she will work to actively engage the youth and grassroots organization in Lebanon and the region. Khatib told the Daily Star that she wishes Carnegie Center to be regarded as a hub for fresh policy ideas, open to new ideas, and across the region get different points of views. She was born and raised in Lebanon until she left for university, has spent her entire professional career abroad. She started studying Islamist movements in the wake of the September 11, 2011 attacks on New York and Washington before moving on to international relations and most recently reform and democracy in the Arab world. New political voices are emerging, but they face many challenges and a long journey, Khatib said, expressing cautious optimism about the potential for young people to make an impact in today's political climate where they face an uphill battle. Al-Qaeda in Syria is fighting to drive rivals out of areas bordering Turkey and Iraq in a bid to control territory stretching from Iraq into northern Syria. Across the north and east, the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant has set, as it's called, ISIL, has set up checkup points on roads to border crossings and opened fronts to crush other rebel groups fighting to oust President Bashar al-Assad. Residents spoke of a strategy that involves ISIL taking over resources and routes using brutal methods aimed at forcing the population into submission. Analysts and activists on the ground have also noted the tactic. Charles Lister of IHS Jane's Terrorism and Insurgency Center said ISIL had adopted a perceivable strategy of acquiring and consolidating control of areas on Syria's borders with both Iraq and Turkey ever since it came on the scene in the late spring. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad says it is too early to say whether he would run for re-election next year, as he accused neighbor Turkey of harboring terrorists along its border who would soon turn against their hosts. The comments by Assad, who spoke in an interview with Turkey's private Halk TV, came as heavy clashes in the north on Friday pitted mainstream rebels and Kurdish militias against al-Qaeda-linked fighters. The interview was the latest in a series that the Syrian president has given to foreign media as part of a charm offensive in the wake of the Russian broker deal that averted the threat of a U.S. airstrike over an August chemical weapons attack which killed hundreds of people. Assad used the interview to attack Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan, warning Ankara would pay a high price for allowing foreign fighters to enter Syria from its territory to fight Syrian government forces. Coming up next, Pope Francis is advising married couples not to go to bed angry. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, criticized some aspects of President Hassan Rouhani's landmark UN visit, in which he spoke to his U.S. counterpart, but voiced broad support. The comments were the first public response by Khamenei, who wields ultimate authority in Iran, to Rouhani's overtures to the West in New York last week, which were capped by a historic 15-minute telephone conversation with U.S. President Barack Obama. The telephone conversation on September 27th, the first diplomatic contact between Iranian and U.S. presidents, broke 34 years of icy relations between Tehran and Washington since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Khamenei said American administration is a government that is seized by the international network of Zionism and has to put up with the Israeli regime and show flexibility towards it. Islamist supporters of deposed Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi challenged the military with a call for new protests on the 1973 Arab-Israeli war anniversary after the deadliest violence in weeks. The anti-coup alliance of Islamist groups called on its supporters to try once more to reach Cairo's Tahrir Square, blocked off by the army to mark Sunday's 40th anniversary of the war. The conflict, known as the October War in the Arab world and the Yom Kippur War in Israel, is remembered proudly by the Egyptian army as it caught Israel's defenses unaware and led ultimately to Egypt's recovery of the Sinai Peninsula in the 1979 peace treaty. Attempts on Friday by Islamist protesters against the army's July 3rd overthrow of Morsi to reach Tahrir Square sparked clashes with security forces who responded with tear gas and warning shots. 5 people were killed in Cairo's deadliest protest violence in more than a month, as demonstrators clashed with coup supporters as well as security personnel. Somali armed group Al-Shabaab says that Westerners who arrived in boats attacked a house in one of its coastal bases under the cover of night, drawing gunfire from rebel fighters. Foreign forces landed on the beach at Barawe, about 180 kilometers south of Mogadishu. and launched an assault that al-Shabaab attempted to repel, according to Sheikh Abdiaziz Abu Musab, the spokesman for the armed group's military operations. It was not immediately clear who had been killed or why the Barawe base had been targeted. Al-Shabaab said it carried out an attack on a Kenyan shopping mall 2 weeks ago that killed at least 67 people. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry warns that a prolonged political crisis in Washington could weaken the United States globally as the U.S. government shutdown drags into a 5th day. If it were prolonged or repeated, people would begin to question the willingness of the United States to stay the course and its ability to. That's not the case, and I don't think it will be. According to Kerry, his comments come with Congress appearing no closer to resolving the impasse, which has shuttered swaths of government departments and sent hundreds of thousands of federal workers home. In a bid to seize the moral high ground, House Speaker John Boehner, the top Republican in Congress, declared this isn't some game after a report cited an unnamed official saying that the White House is benefiting from the shutdown. The shutdown is rocking the U.S. government barely 12 days away from a far more challenging fiscal hurdle, the need to raise the U.S. debt ceiling or suffer a catastrophic credit default.
This shutdown could be over today. We know there are the votes for it in the House of Representatives. And as I said yesterday, if Speaker Boehner will simply allow that vote to take place, we can end this shutdown. A whole bunch of families, not just here in Washington, but all across the country, will have the certainty that a paycheck will be coming, that they'll be able to make their mortgage, that they'll be able to pay their expenses, that they'll be able to look after their families.
This isn't some damn game. The American people don't want their government shut down, and neither do I. All we're asking for is to sit down and have a discussion and to bring fairness, reopen the government, and bring fairness to the American people under Obamacare. It's as simple as that. But it all has to begin with a simple discussion.
Pope Francis is advising married couples not to go to bed angry, even if plates do fly, in a light-hearted address during a pilgrimage to the sites associated with St. Francis of Assisi. Argue as much as you like. Even if the plates fly, that is fine, but never end the day without making peace, the Pope said in Assisi Cathedral. He said married couples who separate have not managed to forgive each other in time. He also added that if married couples learn to say sorry, that is peace. It is a nice secret, and it's life, rather than painful separations. An international exhibition of dolls, including an exhibit to mark the 400th anniversary of the Romanov dynasty, is opening in Moscow. Now its 9th year, Moscow's International Doll Salon is opening its doors to the public, bringing together designers from Russia as well as all over the world. As part of the exhibition, some of the dolls on displays are recreations of dolls more than 100 years old. Each of the dolls are completely unique, having been replicated to exactly resemble long-lost designs from the Romanov dynasty, the rulers of Russia from 1613 until the Russian Revolution in 1917. Whether it's pain, joy, love, or sadness in the eyes of these dolls, it's all from the artist. Dolls like these have been sold for $10,000 a piece, and artists say it's hard to part with their creations. Visitors come to the International Doll Salon for a variety of reasons, some to marvel, and others to gain inspiration for their own designs. On that note, we end our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. 18 survivors of the Indonesian boat accident are expected to return to Beirut on Sunday, with the exact number of Lebanese nationals missing still unknown. Al-Qaeda in Syria is fighting to drive rivals out of areas bordering Turkey and Iraq in a bid to control territory stretching from Iraq into northern Syria. In Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei criticizes some aspects of President Hassan Rouhani's landmark UN visit. Those are your Saturday headlines live on Future Television in Beirut. I'm Yumna Naufal, wishing you a good weekend. Good night.